So you have to be bold to address the issues that no one else wants to address. So as a leader, sometimes there's issues that nobody wants to address, nobody wants to deal with it. They just kind of want to turn the other cheek and not deal with it. As a leader, you lose the right to do that. You can no longer turn your cheek. You have to be bold enough to address the issues that need to be addressed. Yeah, and you'll find that people, your subordinates, will run over you because they kind of sense that fear. They kind of see it like, okay, she's afraid, she's not going to say nothing to me, I can do whatever I want to do. So you have to have the courage to make the right decisions that may be painful too. So what is a decision that you may have to make as a leader that may be painful, that you would have to exhibit some type of courage?
Termination.
Termination. That's the main thing. That's one of the weaknesses I have had at times during a leadership, my leadership journey, is that I've had it where, and this is something to pay close attention to. As a leader, when you're working, you have two types of hats. So I call it the henchman. That means that you're the person who has to come through and smack the hammer, and then once your business grows and you have a second tier where you're the you're the president and you're the visionary, you can kind of keep things going and you're envisioning and oh, it's just so wonderful and beautiful. You don't have to be that hammer smacking person. But unfortunately, you go through a phase where you're kind of trying to be both of them because you don't have that buffer in between to smack that hammer. But if you're at that point where this is your startup, I don't know if do you have anybody that is like underneath you that kind of manages things for you,
No.
or Phil, or so how do you guys understand what I'm saying, where it kind of gets hard, where you kind of want to motivate them, but then you find yourself at the same time having to come in and write somebody up 15 minutes later, but then you want to try to rebuild them up at the same time. You guys understand?
I think though that probably what helps would be just defining and being very clear in the expectations, so that when you have to address when expectations weren't met or something went wrong, then
Right.
They can't say I never heard it or you never told me. You've got to be very clear
Yes, you do.
about everything,
Yeah.
their job descriptions, their duties, the expectations of all that,
Right.
so that when you're probably terminating because something didn't measure up.
Right,
So you're
right.
constantly measuring them,
Right.
and
Yeah.
you know, it's not going to make it any easier, but I think it helps you helps you have the courage
Right.
to go in and
To do
make
it.
the tough decision.
Right. So going further, a little bit further, you have to have some type of assessment tools.
Yeah.
Because I have found that if I didn't have those assessment tools that I was measuring them on, that I could not come in and I always say have all your ducks in a row. Because if you have all your ducks in a row, then it makes it easier to have the courage to come through and do a termination. But if you know as a leader, you've been slacking off a little bit, you haven't had the boldness or the courage to write somebody up, I always say, establish a case in every situation when dealing with the person. So when you're getting ready to term somebody, you better have all your ducks in a row. Don't just get mad today as a leader, go back to morals and values, and just say, oh, I'm mad at you today, so I'm just going to just term you. And you know that it's something in here that's just not right and that you're not being fair and just by the individual. So yeah, having all of your ducks in a row, being precise, what is the expectations is critical. But I'm just warning you, you do go through a phase where you're trying to balance that if you do not have a buffer, meaning that you don't have a henchman, I call him. In my father's business, I was the person that went around and just wrote people up, laid them off, came in, terminate them, okay, pack your stuff up, take your keys and, God bless you, that's it. And I didn't mind doing it. I loved it. I loved being the person that was the bad guy. Versus when people felt as though I really need someone to talk to, then they could go to him and he could sit there and but when you're trying to balance both of that out, it just gets very, very hard because I'm trying to encourage you, Phil, or I'm trying to encourage you, Terry, but at the same time, I gotta come here and write you up. So a lot of times I'm doing a sandwich effect where I'm trying to say something positive, go in, this is what you did wrong, and then come back and say something positive as well too. So as a leader, I'm just warning you that gets very, very tricky, and that is where you can fall into not having courage because you get wrapped up into this is a good person, I'm trying to motivate them, they have so much potential, I really don't want to write them up, so you got to keep that courage.
So how would you manage that in a situation like that, where it is just one person, you don't have that henchman?
You don't have the henchman. The best way that you have to do that is you have to do what Phil basically said. Be very specific in what your expectations are to them, but keep a track record of everything. Don't come in. You have to be able to say it's for the good of the organization, you and that individual, that you hold them accountable for whatever they're not doing, because if you come back and you allow it to build up and build up and build up, you'll see them falling off, and it's just like, you have to fight yourself. There's been times where I had to fight myself. You know what? At the end of the day, this person I really need to fire their behinds right now. But I didn't have the boldness or the courage to do what I was supposed to do. So what do? You don't beat yourself up about it. You start over. The next day is a new day. If they screw up the next day, write them up. Get your ducks in a row so that you can have the courage to do what you have to do. Because you have the courage if you have all the proof. The proof is there. What can a person say? You're not doing what you're supposed to do. So you kind of go from there.
Would another part of it be also if you were inconsistent from employee to employee? Because they're all watching each other and you let that one get away with this one, now you on me, and this, can that cause you problems down the line?
It could.
Inconsistency?
It can, and you also have to be attentive to what you're doing. So you should always be measuring, like, okay, I have to write Phil up, and I should be taking everyone else in account of, did I treat him the same way? So you always want to look at, are you being fair and just to everyone in your group? And if you're not, then you have to come through and justify that in some way. You've been here 20 years, you know better. This person's been here only 90 days. Whatever that may be, you have to somehow come back and justify why you're not doing that. But I have found that the best thing to do is that if you're not being inconsistent, you don't have that boldness and the courage, and tomorrow is a new day. You start all over. Don't beat yourself up about it, but move forward and get your ducks in a row. Especially when you come to a point where a business can evolve and people will outgrow the business, or you'll outgrow them, or they'll outgrow you, however, that goes. So you'll have to figure out, okay, somebody's been here for 10 years and really they're not a fit anymore. So what do I do? Your business is growing, it's evolving, it's developing. Some people can only get you so far. And you as a leader can only get a business so far too without re-evolving yourself. I found that I had to come through and reinvent myself as an individual because the business got stagnant because I did. So I had to come through, reinvent myself as a leader in order to go forth again. And you'll find that people that are under you, you'll outgrow them as well too. So it's either how do you develop them and get them to a new level, or you have to determine whether or not they're just no longer a fit for your business.